Just like someone who is blind, if you feel that you are in darkness or you have closed your eyes, and if you are not able to see the object of your mind clearly, then you need to know that you are sinking down. So whether you are sitting down or whether you are walking around, and if you are thinking of Hadu, or if you're having the concentration of breathing, then the object of your concentration or when the object of your concentration disappears. For example, if you are saying 간세음보살, 간세음보살, and there is no even agony being cultivated, or even when you are reciting 간세음보살, you cannot even think of it. Or those who are meditating in observation, the object of the meditation is, for example, when you are imagining Buddha, you don't have the image of Buddha clearly in front of you, and the object of your mind concentration, if it disappears, we call it sinking down. So even when you are talking about Hadu, or even those things, after some time, you cannot even hear about Hadu, or you cannot even recite the mantra, or when you are even at the point of time when you are in a comfort, we also call it slumber. And if it happens so, it's also possible in Taoism, and even Brahmin is possible. That's why in Buddhism we tell you not to close your eyes, and we also think it's important. And inside of it, the place of you need to have it. You need to have it flow to one part, then only you do not become blank later. Your mind will become blank. So when you do the meditation, you have to think it's very important. If you don't do so, then if you study it in detail, maybe the Hadu or mantra, you cannot hear them well. After some time, you just become comfortable. And the comfort, you misunderstand that you are actually studying, which is not okay. So if you study in detail, when we do our meditation, we say, do not close your eyes. And if you close your eyes, then normally you feel sleepy very soon. Normally people think when you close your eyes, the meditation works out better. But later, that actually harms your practice in later part, and so you have to open your eyes and do it. And you have to make it into a habit. If it becomes habitual for you, our eyes, it has a habit to stare at something outside. So while sitting down, make a point, and if you're sitting down and looking at it, or if you feel that you can see something outside, all of them is Well, all of them happens because of your illusions that you have been seeing so far, and that's 100% wrong. If you sit down and if you have the concentration with your eyes, then it's not okay because you have the illusions arising from your eyes. Some people, they teach you how to do the meditation after making a dot, but if you sit and if you practice your meditation looking at the dot, it's a big problem. It's a concentration of the eyes. It doesn't become the concentration of the mind. We are right now doing it in order to concentrate with our heart. The things that's moving inside our mind, the body, we can do it strictly with the orders that's given to us. But normally people, they think that body and mind is different, and so they don't follow the disciplinary orders given, but they just try to control the mind. And most of the Westerners and also like us, we cannot go in too deep because we are being stubborn about it. Even Koreans, they're very stubborn. They drink and they do the meditation, and that's not okay. If you try to sit and do the meditation after drinking, that's 100% not possible. So if your body is moving around, you can take control of it with the discipline. But the discipline of the mind, what is that? That's the meditation. It's in order to control the mind. Even the body, when it's moving in and out in a very strong manner. Well, if you say you don't want to follow the discipline, but instead you like to do meditation, then mostly you fail, and so you make choices. But if you go to hospital and when you are sick, if the doctor sees between the different medicines and gives you the medicine, if you say, oh, you don't like this medicine because it's red in color or yellow in color, and you don't want to do it because of this and that, and if you ask, you only like to take the last medicine, then why do you go to hospital? You could just do whatever you want. Why do you go and ask a doctor in the hospital? So it's just like a desert in the order. So the wrong things that has been passed down by the words of Venerable Yukju, even though everything is done by the mind, you can just do everything with the mind. Well, then why don't you even eat your food with your mind? Why do you eat? Why do you bite? Why do you chew and why do you eat it? Why do you digest? The things that you have to do with your body, you have to do. And because the body and the mind, they are not two separate entities. And so if the body is not proper, then no matter how much you try to control your mind, that's almost like when it's very when there's a strong wave, you're not trying to move and you just hold on to it. But on the sea, if you're out in the sea and if the wave is very strong, no matter how strong you hold on to the ship, you're going to shake. Those people who doesn't know about it, they say if you don't, you just have to follow Hadu and it's possible. But it's not okay. If you do not follow the discipline, then it's 100% not working out. All of them is a lie when they say it's going to be okay. When there is a strong wave, if you put out a ship and if you travel on it, then the ship is just like our body and the wave is just like outside borderline. And when there is a wind and when there is a wave and the ship is rocking and the person on the ship, with what ability will the person be still? 100% the person is going to rock together with the ship. There's the body and the mind, they are not two different entities. So even in our country, we are not able to express that we love each other between the husband and wife. Then and people say that, oh, it's all enough just with the mind. Then why do you live with your husband or your wife? You can just live with your ghost. Why do you take the form of the human being and try to live like a human? So the body and the mind, even when you do the repentance, you have to do even in a psychological way and also in your behavior. If you've done something wrong, you should say I'm sorry and you should bow down. But if you stand in a very stubborn manner and if you say I haven't done anything wrong, then it actually you're not doing any repentance. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So the body and the mind, you cannot divide it into two separate entities. And if you say, oh, if I just gain enlightenment with the mind, it's okay. It's okay that you don't have to, and the body does not have to follow any discipline. That kind of idea is very wrong. In Korean Buddhism, it's something terribly wrong.
그래서 이게 이제 그 마음을 갖다가
So controlling our mind, we call it meditation. Controlling the body, that's the disciplines. They're not divided into two different things, but they are interdependent and interrelated to each other.
개와 정이라는 것은 서로 인간관계에 있단 말이야. 그런데 분별해가 있지 않은
But if you do not have the sense of discrimination, we don't have the wisdom of discrimination, then we often think wrong and we have wrong perception. And because of that, the wrong thought, it keeps shaking us up and down. The wrong thought, we just feel so stubborn about it and we just turn our opinions up and down, and that's why it's not okay. So if you don't have the proper perception, that's also very difficult. So those three things simultaneously, when the thoughts arise, it has to be and when it puts into thought, we have to do samatha, and the body it has to follow the discipline. So even you even receiving the precepts, you feel that maybe it's good like acts as some token to free yourself from evil things. But if you don't follow this, what's the use of it? What's the use of receiving the precepts? If you only have the prescription and if you don't change it to medicine and the pharmacy, then it has no meaning. You just take the prescription and you just put it home safely, and you said you received the precepts. Once I went to a restaurant and someone told me that I decided to go to church, and when I asked why, the person said, well, after going to church the business does well, but I got precepts from you before. And so I asked, did I give you a dog before? Because the statement is not even even worse than the dog's barking. And so if just like someone with the closed eyes looks, you should not do it just like a blind person. You have to open your eyes. And also the point of the concentration or reliance of the mind, it should be clear. You should not miss it out. until the point that all the agony stops. You have to keep continuing. If you miss it, then it's all wrong. Here, the missing or miss it refers to two different things. The first one is if you have slumber, if you're suffering from slumber and if you miss it, then even if we tell them this borderline again and again, they keep saying same thing. I am able to study now, right? I feel comfortable sitting. They forget all the things I've said so far. That's not okay. So you have to pay your attention and do it. And also another point is when it proceeds to different thought, when it goes to different boundary, that's the second one. The body, you have to sit in lotus position, and here making you sit is in order to make sure that you do not come into contact with the external boundaries and lose your concentration. But if you're sitting and even if and with your eyes half open, it doesn't mean you have to look outside. It doesn't encourage you to look out. But it actually means you should look inside. And even if you cannot see outside, it doesn't matter even if you see something else. So we're asking you to sit here so that you do not come in contact with other boundaries. So for example, even the sound, you have to try not to hear sound of other things. So in olden times, they studied a lot of practice. They did a lot of practice in the cave, because once you go into cave, you cannot hear much. When I sat in the cave about 20 days, it was really nice because you don't hear anything. Not even the sound of crowd. And in that situation, when you have the concentration of mind and when you go into slumber, or if I have some agony that's arising, just like thread of silk passing by, just like even the small agony, you can see it but if you see other sound and if you see something else, if you hear other sound, then you don't feel so sensitive and so you don't feel much. But in such a situation, you can feel and know everything. So when I teach you something like this, there's one thing that I find very unpleasant in all of you. No matter how much I try to teach, it doesn't happen. Or although you claim that you are doing it, but when it comes to your children or when it's got to do with something of your attachment, then you go to different direction. For women, it's a big problem. It's a serious problem. You just lose everything that you have learned so far. It's a big problem. And so Buddha spoke about this in a very serious manner, and also he has decided many more disciplines in other disciplines, and even more than what monks has to follow. But because of problems of bringing up children, you also have a lot of distractions. But here, the thing called attachment, even from our body, we have hormones. So if we tell you not to do it, then something, very array, just like the light being refracted in a black hole, you go to some wrong direction, and it's a problem that's very serious. If time passes, even just like very small ones, if you have something that's emotional or you have something you have attachment for, then you go to different direction which you're not supposed to. And that's why they say it's not easy. meditating, where I say up to this point, although it's a habit, without doing prior practice, I think it's a great sin because you go to because the outcome is something weird. Although it is not something easy, and even if it goes in the wrong way, you should not misunderstand. Do not give excuses like you did that because of your daughter. If it becomes something emotional, then weirdly all your rationality it starts to see in a very translucent screen. Although you are not able to see it, but I can see it that you are going through that time. It's very serious, and while studying, it's a great obstacle. You cannot see it in a rational way, but when it's something that's related to your child, then you become very selfish. And also when it's related to you, you do the same. But, well, in fact, even if you do that, it doesn't change anything, but still you follow that. That's because of your long practiced habit.
눈을 감은 것 같아서 마음의 대상을 분명하게 볼 수 없을 때는 침몰하고 있는 줄 알아야
You have to know that you're thinking when you are not able to see clearly, just like you have your eyes closed. Also, you think about it like this. You're also finding reasons for you to think. Even studying those scriptures, you find so many different reasons. Because this summer is hot, maybe I should sit and eat watermelon, and maybe I should miss class one time. That's you going backwards, not forwards. And also, when you pray, yesterday I watched TV until late, so I cannot get up early in the morning. So you should not waste your energy in that way so that you cannot even pray. If you think that's going to happen, then you have to reduce what happened before praying. You do everything as per your greatness or your desire, and the next day you complain that you cannot do it because you're tired, and you find so many excuses to do so. This time because you have offering in the house, but normally the offering. And also, when you had the offering around 12 o'clock the day before, you could not pray the next morning. If you find those kind of different excuses and go backwards, that's also one type of agitation or thinking. When you are improving, it means even in the time frame it's going on, and even in the space you're doing it, and even with your heart or your mind you're doing it. And although unlike yesterday, you are able to concentrate a little better, and your desire to pray has become stronger. When you realize them, you're actually not going backwards, and that's actually improvement. But if you don't feel the sense of improvement, but if you give so many different excuses to step backwards, and when you actually take a step backwards, you always have something, because, well, in all the graves there are excuses. All different excuses, because you're young, because you have a headache, because you have diarrhea. You give so many different excuses to avoid it, which is not okay. If you have the thought which is if you have those kind of thoughts, and if you give a meaning to it, that's not acceptable. Just like you are making, you're just locking something, you have to lock it when it's up to a certain point. You have to question what are you saying, and you have to stop it. And you have to try to go forward. Instead, if you give too many different excuses, then, well, it's almost like what kind of excuse can you give in front of death? In front of death, there's nothing that you can give an excuse. You just go. With that in front of you, you should not say anything else.
그래서 이제 하근길수록 아주 하근길수록 왜 하근길은 여러 질의 하근기란 말이야.
The lower it is, well, if you don't have virtue, if you are unlucky, the problem is more serious. Because if you don't have time even to make food, or if you are sick, or if you are so unlucky, or if you are so distracted, even all of you, most of the time, well, when you're eating food, well, we can also find out how studious you are even when you are eating. When you are mixing it with some stew, you can just eat it. But instead of just eating it, you just think, oh, it would have been better if you eat the cold noodle. Then what happens to the rice and what happens to the food that's in front of you? So when we speak of the way here, that's an example that like if you have mixed soybean paste with the rice, then it should just be so. Well, when I'm eating or when I'm dining with you, at times I feel bad, and at times I wonder if I should tell you. We go to restaurant and we eat, but if it's not tasty, well, the chef will not try to please you. You just don't have to come back to the place again. But while eating, you say the other restaurant was delicious. What's going on in here? And you complain. Here is not matter of how delicious the food is, but it actually says that the person's psychology is not is very uncumbersome. It's very the person's psychology is not very comfortable. Well, if you are so uncomfortable, then everything is so. Even to your husband, you have problem, you feel unhappy, and even to your children, you have unsatisfaction. It goes on with everything else. Even in the restaurants, don't say something like that. When I see some women like choosing clothes, I feel so angry, and I wonder how they maintain that kind of boutique. They wear everything and they stand in front of mirror and they take rounds and they come out and see, and they also go to many different places and come back. And after all, you buy from the place that you have already checked out before. It's very complicated. And if you end up buying, well, just go there and look, and you can just discuss if it's going to fit you or not. Well, that up to that level, that's okay. Well, amongst the agony, the distraction comes from the judging or comparing. While I saw amongst the people that I've seen, no one is actually happy after when they compare so much. I've seen Mr. Jung Jung eat once, dine once, and I realized that that's why maybe he's very lucky. He was dining in Pongwonsa, and he just lifted his bowl a little, and he said, "Please don't give me too less." And he asked the whole bowl to be filled, and he could eat the whole plate, whole bowl in 8 spoons. Well, it's of course I'm exaggerating a little, but he did not even eat many different side dishes, but he was so grateful. But when I see, I realize that, well, he's lucky enough to become the chairman of a multinational company. But instead, a lot of you complain, oh, this is salty, bring something. That's the sense of distraction. You're just bouncing back and forth between the boundaries, and you're so angry about it. Even when you go to hair salons, when I went to a market in Thailand, I was very happy. When I saw the mayor in Thailand, I was very happy. He said, I've never seen the mirror when his wife actually cut his hair. And when I asked why, he said, my wife would have done a great job. There should be things like that. But after cutting, when you see the mirror, what does it mean? That means you have a doubt if it's done well or not. If it was me, I would not cut the hair for those who doubt my ability. So as a human, if you practice, you should become mundane to things. You have to become mundane. But instead, if you're so difficult, well, even when you go to market and when you buy something, you can just glance something and just buy. But instead, you choose. You drag everything out from inside and you turn them upside down. It's not okay if you're so difficult. That's distraction. Even while you meditate, if you have such a strong sense of distraction, then it takes long time. Just because you're sitting doesn't mean you can do it easily or in a short period of time. But because you try to control it, the sense of distraction reverses in a more strong manner. The sense of distraction doesn't come from anywhere else, but comes from the comparison. And from the comparison, you try to choose something better and you are jealous. And when things hit those boundaries, then the sense of distraction arises. Also, whenever from the phenomenon of external world, if your mind is towards them, and if the mind follows them, or depending on it, if many different thoughts arise, and if you are pulled by other external forces, or if there is a distraction like that, or if there's a chance of disturbance like that, then you have to realize the essential, the nature of the object. So, as I said before, if you're following the boundary of the external forces, or even when you're sitting down, if you're following external forces, while sitting, if you're thinking about your great happiness, well, things like, when I think of my first son, I'm very happy. So while following the boundary of external forces, it could be your complex, or it could be your trauma, or it could be something that you have attachment for. Since that person is my enemy, whenever I think of that person, my heart bounces. If you follow the external boundaries, and if the Samantha, you keep losing them, and we call that laziness. And if you do that, then again and again, the mind that's been concentrating, it gets weak, and you become lazy, and you stop doing them. So normally when a student studies, if you don't teach them how to concentrate well, but we just put them inside things like prison, and we just put their body there, and you expect them to do it, but that actually doesn't help help the student to study. If you just put them in the room, then although no computers, without anything, do you know what they do with the smartphone? They do something else. And even if you take their phones away, they sit and they do something else with your thoughts. And how can you control them? Or else, there are two things that they do. Either they sleep, or they think of something else and just sit there. And someone who does those kind of things, normally or generally, they cannot study. Those good students, what do? They have the sense of concentration. When they are concentrating, they do concentrate. And only those who does that like that, they do well. Without that, it doesn't work out well. If you continue staring at the flow of the negligence, or if you lose the strength of the mind that's heading towards to other direction, your meditation loosens or lessens. If you let things go, then what happens? Or if you let meditation stop, then what happens? Think about it. First of all, it torments you the most at the time of aging, living, and also sickness. Well, first, especially when you're aging, because of aging, if your limbs don't follow the things of your brain, or when you're sick very well. When you're sick, that's a problem. That's when the problem strikes you the most. Well, if you're healthy and if you can do whatever you want to do, then although things might be a little uncomfortable, you have no problem. But when you're old and when you're sick, then no prescription can work for anything. Think about the suffering you go through at that time, and so in order to prevent that from happening, you have to have a strong desire to study. Where there could be someone who does more or who could be less, but if you do the practice, what do you think is a dark horse for you? It will be your husband, because your husband didn't study and drank, and even now I believe there will be some husband who doesn't listen, whose health is not very healthy, and when you see them, you feel that your consciousness is not very clear, and if they age a little more, then imagine what could happen. they'll be yelling at you. Well, when they yell at you, you thought maybe it is just so, but if they stop yelling, but if they're very depressed, then you feel sad and you feel sorry for them. But if they're yelling at you, then you fear that the person has given you trouble the whole life. But now he's old, he doesn't even bring money home. And even outside,
나가서 또 직장 이제 끝나고 나면 나가서
when men age or when men become old, they no longer go out to play with other colleagues. But normally but women, grandmothers, they do spend a lot of a quality time with their friends, and then what happens? They will have something very dense inside their heart, and so they could also get angry for something very trivial.
거짓말 탐지기에서 그냥 거짓말이라고 나왔대. 할머니가 아니라고 한 것은 거짓말이라.
I saw on NBC broadcasting TV that about 2 years ago there was a case which was similar, that someone tried to kill other with pesticide. Maybe it was a little less amount of pesticide, so they only had stomach problem and vomiting, and they were just hospitalized, but it didn't end up in murder. So grandmothers, at least they can go to town hall and they do spend time, and they can also cook and do something. But if you have grandfathers together, then they don't even know how to cook, and they have no money because all the money is already given to their wives. So even if they want to go out and buy something to eat, they don't have money to go out and eat. But instead they would think that if it was some time back, then I would have bought everyone something. Well, if I buy food for all 5 people, it will be about $200, and then coffee $30. And so they're afraid to buy. And if they tell you to, and then some say you can just go to a restaurant and buy alone, eat alone. But eating alone is also quite embarrassing. And even at home, even if you want to make ramen for yourself, you spend about 2 hours looking for the utensil. It's not like the olden time. It's not like a stove in olden time, but nowadays, even when I try to go to kitchen and see, I don't know which button to press. And also, those electric stove is also quite complicated. So people like your husbands, they cannot do it, and they even wonder if they should put the soya sauce, which soya sauce they should put, and also. They think that what they cook is not delicious. It's delicious if you don't cook it, or if you not look at it while cooking. Even you, when you cook something, it's not very delicious, right? You have already smelled the food while cooking, and also you need not to know, then only. Well, if you just see the finished cuisine, it's delicious, but if you know what's going on there, that like you need all the things that you went through in order to prepare the simple meal, it's not very delicious. When you see the leather clothes, if you see how they are being made, you don't really wear them because it's very disgusting. When you see them, how they skin the animals, and also when you see how the hairs are being removed, and when you see them dyed or like bitten, or when you smell the rotten smell, you really don't want to wear it. I said about the bag which ends with tongue. I heard that someone got it. Some wife or member of parliament received it. But when you think of it, right now it looks like some piece of work because it's already been processed. But at the time when they tried to kill the cow, it was all very bloody, and when they skinned it, when they skinned the animal, if you imagine all the procedure that the back went through, and also in countries where there was no money, in countries like Bangladesh, last time over there, about 7 stores house went down, demolished, and a lot of people died. It's just like our Cheonggyecheon marketplace in olden time. Human beings, they could not stand up. The reason why they didn't allow them to stand up was, of course, one part is that they couldn't do it because they didn't have money to build a proper house. But if they walk around standing straight, then they don't have much productivity of the work. So they asked the people to bend and work. So all the people who used to work in Cheonggyecheon area, they also had very bent back. In such place, they get paid about $30 or $3 or $10 a month, and they exploited the laborers, and they brought the leather from those areas, and that's the kind of bag that they sell at very expensive price in luxury brands. So don't look at the shape which is already given out to you, but try to look at something that happens behind the scene, and if by carrying them, what do you get, and what kind of precious things do you put in that bag? If it's a bag that you can just put something and just like few dollars, it'll be fine. But I don't understand why you give so much value to those kind of things. So you have to loosen up the strength which is only going forward to outside. So if you miss out the object of your practice, and if your mind is only attached to the experience of past or the object of your desire, we call it and if your mind is only going downwards, we call it agitation. So even normally every day, your behavior or your thoughts, they should not look forward for, or they should not go back to the good memory or favorite memory that you had in past and look for distraction. For like Venerable Haewon in Yeosan, he didn't go outside the Donglim Monastery for 10 years. And inside, he prayed in the morning, offered and meditated, and looked at sutras and recited mantras. The whole day, he did that. So our daily routine in monasteries are performed or practiced in order to reduce or cure the agony. In monasteries, you should not do something that encourages agony, whether it's mantra or offering or reading scriptures or teachings, whatever it is, whether it's a prayer or whatever. They're all done in order to reduce the agony. So about 10 years, 20 years, if you continue to do them, then you can see the boundary where it starts to reduce. But since you cannot live in the monastery, at home you have to practice religiously, just like it's a monastery. Even at home, you should not make something that makes it complicated. Whether you buy something or whether you do something, if you realize that it's something that's going to create complication, then
하는 것을 갖다
and you need to know
살펴볼 수
whether it
있어야
is
돼.
something that will cause more complication.
사는 것이
The
굉장히 자꾸
life should
간결해지고
become more simple,
간결해진다는 얘기는
and here
정신을 갖다
simple means
예행하고 명상하고
praying,
기도하고
meditating,
그다음에
reading,
영을
and
듣고 보고
listening
하는
to
것을 자꾸
scriptures and listening to teachings.
집중적으로 해나간다.
They should become the focus of your life.
전에
Before
서울에
someone
어떤
in
분은
Seoul,
한번
the person said to
얘기를
me
하는데
that
보니까 스님 제사 지내는 일이 번거로워서
offering
안
to
지내려고 그러니까
ancestors
그
is
좋은
quite
풍속인데
cumbersome, so
애들
I'm thinking of not doing it. But
참 애들한테 뒤에 부모에게 효를 가르치는데 그 참 좋은 풍속인데 안
But
그럴
I
수가
think it's a
없고
good thing to teach
제사를
kids
지내는데
the good
번거롭게
manners,
하는
so
것
I
같아서
cannot stop it.
그냥 진날 아침에
But I
가족들이
only
먹을 음식만
prepare a
하는데
certain meal for the whole family,
그냥 국거리
just making some soup or just some
귀신이 무슨
normal
마늘
dish.
들어가면 안 먹는다고 누가 봤어? 옛날에는
In
그
olden
간을 안
times, they did not
맞췄던
put
이유가
salt
있어.
because
양념을
the garlic
이
or other
마늘이나 이런 것은
spices,
양념이거든.
they did not
양념하고
put
간을
them
안 맞추고 해서 올렸던 것은 제사 지내고 난 뒤 그걸 갖다 간 맞춰서 다시 조리해서
because
먹기 위한 거야. 그 전에는 간을 안 맞추고 했던 것은
because in olden times they just put the raw food, and later after the offering they put some, they would recook it, they would cook it once again and eat.
생거로 다 올렸거든. 그러니까 이게
So it doesn't really matter if you even put spices. It's nothing like some people say that if you put spices, the ghosts don't eat. But no one has actually said that. So the person only prepare food that you can eat the next day, and by doing that, you could just do offering on the day of the offering to ancestor, and next day they would eat the food, the whatever was offered before, and they only the special food there was something like what their parents liked very much. And also, since it's quite complicated, they would offer a tea, and that tea, when they tried to follow the Confucianism, it was quite complicated. So the person only read the Diamond Sutra once, and I said it was quite good. After reading the whole scripture of the Diamond Sutra, since the kids could also recite well, it was quite good. With the in front of whatever is prepared, they read the Diamond Sutra. And in the end said, this is the teaching of Buddha. So don't just eat the food, but if you could follow Buddhist teachings. So the ancestor had full stomach and also should be very full even with the mind, even in the mind. And I complimented the person and said it was a really good job. At home, don't make something or don't bring some matters that will complicate things at home. Also, if your mind is at some point of time where, if your mind is only at the part where your heart is at the object of your attachment, we also call it minute agitation. If you think that if my child doesn't have kimchi, but if you change your mind once again to your teaching, that is still an agitation. And it's not easy to stop them because as a habit, there are two things. One is something that was good to you, something that was befitting the greatness of your comfort, and the second one is something that you hated very much. Although you remember both of them, things which are not very extreme, even if you try to remember them, you cannot think of them. And most of the things that you can remember are those which are already attached to you. And those are the things that tormented you. And so that's why you need to think of Hwadu or meditation and try to stop them. Agitation rises when your heart is very excited. If your heart is excited, then it becomes very active and is bound to go free. And the countermeasure to it is by calming your mind. In order to do that, whether it's external or internal, the object of your attachment, you should lose a concentration to the attachment. Therefore, whether it's voidness or suffering, it's important to apply them once again to the object of your attachment. That is quite effective. So again and again, those things which I had attachment for, or which I like very much, then even for momentarily, if you feel that they are void and they're just a relation that's bound to pass by, and if you can observe them, then it's quite okay. There are the things which are just going to pass by. Please observe things in that way, and if you do that, then your mind will the attachment which was stuck, just like a gum, just like how it's being taken out by ice, they will fall off. So all the things that we had attachment for, they are void and they change, and they will disappear on a fine day, just like water bubbles. The method to countermeasure the agitation and sinking down is self-awareness. The role of the self-awareness is to double-check if the practice of mind is remaining at the state at the object of your practice or not. So what is self-awareness here?
지금 사마타를 하는데 자각을 한다는 게 무슨 뜻이냐?
We are talking about those very detailed things for the practice, and the self-awareness refers to 관세음보살, 관세음보살, 관세음보살. If I do this, then although my mouth is saying 관세음보살, 관세음보살, but the thought is actually sinking down. If it changes, then it's actually the slumber. But if I say 관세음보살 and if I think of other traumas that I had, and if I think of something else that's also agitation, then what is self-awareness? The self-awareness refers to double-checking myself if I am not falling into a slumber or agitation, and it's knowing myself. If things are going well or if things doesn't go well,
지금 잘 되고 있다, 잘 되고 있지 않나 이걸 갖다 차근차근
when there's a slumber that it doesn't go in this rhythm, and if it doesn't go in this rhythm, then knowing that I am in slumber state, then that is self-awareness. And also if my thoughts go to distraction, and since it is distraction, since myself knowing that it's a distraction and coming back to the original state, that is the self-awareness. Knowing that I have fallen for distortion or agitation or slumber and come back to the original state. That is the self-awareness in samatha. And so if you are not able to do that, when you are not able to do that, then without this kind of self-awareness, then sometimes we fall deep into the slumber, and so the comfortable state, you think of it as the result of your practice. And if you're obsessed by it, then at the state then when you wake up, then you realize that agony just strikes you, and so you try to go back to the state. But we see those people quite often, and it's very difficult to free people from that. And it is very difficult to accept that that is not true. That's because we do not have the self-awareness. The role of the recollection is not to forget, but to make the object of mind to remain in the state of the practice. So the recollection here, not forgetting the word or the name 관세음보살, and when the mind continues to go forward to the point of rest or the point of our motive, we call it recollection in Samatha. Does it happen when you actually try to practice? Does it happen if you follow the method that I taught you? Does it work? Well, no one is answering me. A little? If you have concentration, then the essence is also you need to have the strength to push.
밀어붙이는 힘이 그걸 갖다 우리는 이제 분심이라 그러는데 계속
You need to have the strength to push. We also call it the righteous indignation, and it actually comes from the compassion and bodhisattva. So without bodhisattva or compassion, if you just pray, then 100% you are the fall to slumber, or itself becomes the sense of distraction. What about you? How much can you do? About 30%? That's very good.
잘한다. 아주 잘한다. 우리 보살은 잘해. 뒷보지 마.
Difficult?
안 돼?
I think she's a little shy. I think she can do it, but she's saying that she can't because she's a little shy. What about you?
이거는 얼마나 돼?
Difficult?
잘 안 돼?
I don't think it's difficult, but you don't actually try. Oh, not 30%, 30 minutes. Can you do it without missing even the minute things or without slumber? Well, those if you are able to achieve even 30 minutes, if you are in this state, then even at the point of your death, although you could be a little shaken, but you will be peaceful. So I'm telling you, you should keep doing it. Do not give excuses. If you can give excuse in front of that, that's fine, but you cannot do it. It's something without choice, and there's no way we can try to escape from it other than this method. What about you?
해보면 얼마 정도 됩니까? 조금 작게?
I think you would have problem with slumber. Now you don't have slumber. Okay, very good.
옳지. 그렇게 하고. 저 우리 저 보살님은 열심히 해야.
Do you try hard or
심한 거야.
can you concentrate well? You try for 1 hour, but how about the concentration?
집중이 얼마나 돼?
Maybe you only have a very loud voice to recite. Do you do it hard for an hour? Does it work when you walk around? If that's not working, if that's not happening, then maybe it's not yet complete. What about you? You cannot do it more than 5 minutes, or even 5 minutes. That's because of so many things in your house.
예?
Because of your worry to run your house.
그거 생각하다 그러지.
Well, that's also a big thing, but when you study, don't think about those everything around you. You have to do harder. So if so, when you try to run your house in a good way, when you try to take care of your house, and when you also try to study, then well, you cannot actually come to this way. So it's a little difficult.
조금 매는 것 같아요.
You also need to be honest. Like if you feel you have some problem with agitation, you need to realize where you stand. There are also some people who say that they have already gotten enlightenment. Well, that's a big lie. What about you?
박선아 보살은 얼마나 돼?
You went for holiday and left your practice there. The practice also went for holiday. Before, I think you had some problem with sleepiness. Your body figure shows that you had quite a lot of very small thoughts and also quite a lot of problems. And so, because of those little trivial thoughts, it brings sleepiness. And if you can work on them, then well, do you sleep early? Then try very hard in the early morning, and in the morning when you open your eyes, don't do other things, but just wash your face and sit and start with the practice.
앉아서 정지를 해버리고 주력을 갖다 자꾸 해버리라고.
If you do that, and if you are able to do that, then you will feel yourself.
본인이 느껴. 그러니까 좀 편하지. 예?
You feel comfortable yourself, and also you realize that it was just some problem that you have caused.
상강약국 보살이면 얼마나 돼? 응?
You need to read the sutras, but by reading them, you cannot do the samatha. Well, when you are reciting the mantras, how much can you do without confusion?
안 헷갈리고.
Even those 10 minutes, you have to think hard. If you have dozed off while you are reciting it, so no slumber and no other thoughts.
아들 생각 안 나고?
You have to practice concentration very hard.
미니 엄마는 얼마나?
Just like the rosary until you can take one. That's too short. How many years have you studied with me? Well, although you are doing it, you mean to say that, well, you are doing it, but your concentration only lasts up to one round of the rosary. What kind of other thoughts do you have? The things that happen in old times.
우리 득중동 보살님은 얼마나 돼요? 예? 혼침이
If you feel sleepy, then you can do it while you are standing.
서서히.
And you also think many things. And that's why you need to concentrate. And in the end,
사마타를 집중해주면서 맨 끝에
think that if there is virtue, then you wish to pray for your younger
동생한테도 안 좋고 본인한테도 안 좋고.
the member of your family to be born at a good place. So
그런 도중에 그게 중간에
the thought of your brother or sister should not enter to your head. It's not good for you or even your family member. So you should leave it out. That keeps occurring to you because something bad happened to your family member, but it also happened so because of your attachment. Your family member has already died and it's already gone.
흥자 시어머니는
Well, you can recite Konsenbosa for 20 minutes, but how long does your concentration last? No, it's not okay. Not just a recitation of the mantra, but you need to concentrate.
임종진 처사님 어부인께서는
It's not easy.
잘 안 돼? 안 되면 안 돼. 동안이 엄마는? 네?
Where it's not just a matter of you do it or not, but how long does your concentration last? Without breaking off in the middle, and also you do not lose your concentration. So knowing that knowing the point where it's not going well, we call that self-awareness.
될 때 하는 것을.
Do you also want to give it a try?
의인이도 한번 해볼래?
If you start off from your age,
지금
it
네
works the
나이하고
best.
제일 잘 될 때다. 수월 씨면 얼마나 돼?
저는 오늘 스님께서 제가 요즘 들어서 생각하는
아니, 딴소리 하지 말고 얘기해봐.
근데 제가 이제 오천들을 하는데 끝까지 그게 안 가고 뒷부분에 가서 좀 훔친다고. 근데 제가 한번 스님한테 여쭈고 싶은 게 한번 연구를 하는데 굉장히 또렷또렷하면서 좀 표현이 좀 이상하지만 세상 밖에 딱 나온 그런 느낌으로 굉장히 편안하게 느껴졌어요.
So you have the sense of comfort, but
뭐 흐릿하거나 그런 것은 아니고
편안한 느낌을 가진다.
the sense of comfort should not last.
지속돼서는 안 돼. 뭐냐면
Whether you have that kind of
그냥
feeling,
편안한 느낌이 오더라도 그 편안한 느낌
the
그 자체가
feeling
이제 심하라.
itself is
그
the
자체가
distraction.
그러니까 편안한 느낌 오더라도 편안한 느낌
So even if you have the sense of comfort, you should leave it out and then enter back to the konsenbosal.
하기는 하는데 주변의 모든 상황이 나하고는 전혀 관계가 없는 굉장히 그런 부분인데 그것도 훔치는지
아니 그건 이제 그런 생각이 그런 경계가 이제 지금
Well, when you're
집중해서 가는
concentrating,
도중에
you
그
should not
생각이
think of
떠올라서 안
other
된다는 거야.
things. And
그
so
생각이
the
떠올라서
thoughts
안 돼.
or
그
the
생각
deviating
자체가
thoughts,
그러니까
they're
그런
actually
생각이
making your
두 가닥이
thoughts to
나가는 거야.
process to two different paths. So you have to concentrate to one. And since that's something very minute, so if you just realize, then it will break off.
근데 요즘은 조금 그 끝부분에 가서는 훔치는 그래서 훔침이
If you have sleepiness, if you feel sleepy in the end, that's because you're working very hard in the afternoon. So your activities in the daytime, don't get too stressed, and also don't use your brain too much. Then you will have the sleepiness in the evening. That comes to you naturally, so just try to relax a little or use your time more wisely.
뭐 안 하나 보다.
I'm asking you to do it because you think of so many different things. Well, if that doesn't
그게 안 되면
happen, then when you're at a difficult position, then your mind or your heart, it shakes very hard, it rocks very hard, and so you have to do it. You have to practice, you have to keep practicing it.
보살님. 네?
Well, although you say that you don't feel sleepy, you're not in the slumber state, where there are also times when you don't know what is sleepiness or what is slumber itself. When you have those kind of very minute or very detailed slumber, then you don't really know what you're going through. There are times when my chantra, recitation of chantra stops, right? When it starts without sense of agony, then that's a slumber. So it should not stop or it should not break off and it should continue.
알겠죠? 응? 그 옆에 보살님.
It's not that you don't do it, right?
안 하는 건 아니지. 응?
It's difficult.
잘 안 돼.
Well, it's
잘안
difficult.
되지. 응?
You have to try very hard.
아주 열심히 해야 돼. 장보살님 옆에. 응? 어?
What's difficult?
뭐가 안 돼?
1 minute?
어? 1분이? 아니 이걸 갖다 이제 자꾸
You have to try your best to strengthen or extend your time little by little. You know, we make those noodles, right?
짜장면 뽑잖아.
We make the noodles this long and we again try to extend it. Just like that, you have to extend your time.
또 우리 저 뒤에 저 동안이 엄마. 그거는 해야. 응? 응. 그거 안 돼. 그거 안 돼. 연희보살.
You're not doing hard.
어이야?
I don't see the person who is sitting behind you.
연희보살 뒤에.
You have to do it because your husband actually agrees with you, so you can do it.
우리 이경임 보살님. 이경임이 어디 딴 사람이냐? 노력하고. 아니 이제.
No, my question is how long can you concentrate?
예?
Do you still study hard with her?
하는가? 하고는 있다고. 어디 갔냐? 네? 처사님? 아, 그 처사님은 어째 지금 하시오 어째? 네?
Even in my
여기서 이제
opinion,
내가 볼 때 주력이 지금
people
열심히
who
되고
can
있는
do well
사람이
is
청정심하고 동안이 엄마하고 일광하고 세
those three
사람은
people.
열심히 되고 있어. 되고 있는데 다른
But
사람들은
others,
조금 하다가
it
이제
seems
뭐
like there's also some
아직까지 안 되는
difficulty,
사람도 있고
and
이제
there are also some
그
people who tries hard,
벌려고 애를 쓰는 사람도
and
있고 조금 되는 사람도 있고
also
그렇다.
who doesn't do their best to try. So
그러니까 그 지금 우리가
the thing that we are studying right now,
것이
although I emphasize again and again,
주장을 하지만은 다른 걸 가지고 우리가 이제 뭐 기도를 해준다든지 뭐
it's
이런 걸
not
가지고 위로하는
something
걸
that we try
가지고서는
to console others,
아무 집에
just
배 아플
something
때
like a
아까지기
prayer
바르는
or
거야.
something like that. It's just like when you have a stomach
아픈데
ache,
아까지기
you're just
바르면
putting some
의사가
medicine,
발라주면
and if
아이
the
좀
doctor
잠시
gives you
그동안에
medicine
위로를
when you
받겠죠.
have
그러나
stomach ache, but it could give you some sort of relief, but it's not actually the cure. So something like cure, even if it was Buddha,
그 치료되는 방식에
Buddha can only tell you the methods to cure, but curing it is actually changing my karma. So it's only I who can do it. So it's not something like a doctor can perform a surgery and change it, but doctor can only give you a prescription. And it's on our part to try and change. And if we don't do that, nothing can change. So there's no effect at all for coming to the monastery, but it's just fooling each other. And I feel so sorry about this. So for example, in this world, so many different religious places and also the religious leaders in the boundary of religion, they just like bait for the fishing. They try to earn money and also become rich themselves. A lot of religious people they do that, but at the time, it was just like a church at the time of Jesus, and so Jesus said, Jesus yelled at evils to go away. It doesn't help at all. So consoling, well, if you after you come to study, well, I think actually I'm proud of you all because
내가 달라이라마처럼 그냥 진짜
it's not like I have a great virtue like Dalai Lama that so if I say something then a lot of things change. It's not like that. But the things I tell you,
여러분에게 얘기하는 게 달라이라마처럼 막 그냥 아주 평상적으로 얘기해서
Richard Gere said
리처드 기어가 그 얘기 하더라고.
when I asked him what's his opinion about Dalai Lama, he said Dalai Lama is a is an excellent teacher. He also saw him at 76, but he didn't know how he was following him, but he actually entered this path. And he never really struggled hard, but he just did as how Dalai Lama asked him to do, and it was just so easy. And he's very grateful for what Dalai Lama has brought him there. But I cannot do like Dalai Lama. But if there is a scar of your surgery, then if there is a scar for surgery, then I talk about it even at the time of teaching. So sometimes when you listen to my teaching, you have this kind of heartburn. Isn't it so? And there are also times when you when you stress out because of what I say. But someone like Dalai Lama, although he says in a very
그렇게 그 양반
Well,
워낙
because of
공덕이
his
크니까
merit and
이제
his
그렇게
virtue, he's
하겠지만은
able to do that,
나는
but
그렇게
I
못해.
can't. So if you don't study and if you do
그래서
a lot of
공부를 안
things,
하고
a
그냥
lot of
엉뚱한
wrong
짓
things,
하면
and I
난
scold
바로
you.
그냥 뭐라 그랬거든.
But nowadays, I have calmed down a little, so I
성질이 좀
do a
죽었으니
little less.
조금
But
덜하는
in
편인데
olden times,
그전에는
I did
그것보다 더
worse.
했잖아.
So
그러니까
even those
뜯고
who sit and
앉아있는
listen to
사람들도
me,
참 대단한
you need
위치야.
to have your own
내상 안
internal
당하고
strength. Then only you don't
내상 안 당하고
feel hurt.
뜯고 앉아있지.
Well, I know it's
쉽지가
not
않아.
easy.
그래서 내가 뭐
But then what I think
그런데 나는
is,
이제 또 생각이 말이야. 그 뭐 좀 그냥 그럴듯한 말 그냥 뭐 세상에 무슨 뭐 어디 누구는 뭐 그런다
but
그러더만
I don't.
이런
Well, I
세상
don't talk
잡사
about so many
얘기하면서
useless
그
things
잡사
that
얘기를
goes
해가지고
on or
뭔
happens
도움이
in this
되겠어
world,
사실은.
and they don't help you at all with your life.
정신하고 연관이
And if it
없으면
doesn't help you with your
도움이 안
practice,
그런
then there's
얘기를
no
할
need
수가
to talk
없어.
about it. And
그
especially
법상에서
in this
더더욱이나
Dharma
그런 얘기를
seed,
할 수가 없고.
I cannot talk
그럼
about them.
여러분이
But we
이제
are here
이런
together
지금
in order
공부를
to
하고 모인
study,
사람들
and
이거 그래도
we have
지금
also
공부를
started
조금 해
studying.
나가고 있는 상황이란 말이야. 응? 해 나가고 있는 상황이란 말이야. 이제 그렇게 된데 그
For here, other than
공부를 얘기
studying
외에는
with
이제 이
this mass,
대중들과는
there's no need to
공부를
talk
얘기
about
외에는
anything else other than
할 필요가
studying.
없어 사실.
Even those things which you need
위로받는
comfort
얘기
or
같은 건 할 필요가
concernment,
없어.
there's
뭐 때문에
nothing, there's no
위로받은
need
얘기를
to talk about it.
뭐
Those things are
진짜
useless.
아무 쓸데없는 얘기를 갖다 하고 앉았겠어.
So you have to study,
이
then
공부를
only it
해야만이
helps you and
여러분이나
me.
내나 이제 같이 도움이 되니까.
And it only helps us in order to get rid of our agony, and also it helps us with our next life. And why doing that? Because we also do many other good things like offering and also follow up our discipline, and then only in our next life we can be born in a most right manner. And even with the offering, we can do it very religiously, and we can be born as someone who is very virtuous. And we could also have opportunity to listen to many words of wisdom.
번뇌를 줄이기 위해서 열심히 살면 다음 생에 또 태어나서
And in our next life, our karma could be more purified.
일어날 수가 있잖아.
Without doing that,
그렇게 하지
well,
않고서
there's no
뭘 도움이
point or there's nothing that I can help you. What about you? Can you do it a little?
이거는 좀 돼? 용 쓰고? 네?
How can you concentrate? How long can you concentrate? Well, when you concentrate,
그거는 이제 집중할 때
don't just do it with your head.
이 머리로만 하지 말고 머리로 하면
So you have to
그거는
keep
안 되니까
your
꼭
energy at the
하단전에
bottom.
깔아놓고 해라.
Because your bottom is a
그건
little
하단전에
weak, you get
잘 떠.
easily excited.
그러니까 그러고 저 뒤에 우리 보살
Don't hide. What about you?
숨지 말고
You're not doing every day, but
그러면 뭐 날 받아가 하는 거? 아니 11일 정해놓고 얼마나 빠져? 그러니까 어?
you should not miss it.
안 돼, 빠지면 안 돼. 그거는 지금 잘못하고 있는데 뭐냐면
Well, it's good to do 12 to 13 weeks, but later, because you have done so, you have to continue to do it.
이어서 바로 해야 돼. 잔소리 한다고?
Call your husband here. If he tells, if he is complaining about you reciting mantra, then ask him to come here.
그 주사가 허라고
It's actually better if your husband is yelling at you.
그럴 때는 밥도
Well,
하지
don't
말고
even just cook and do it. Then
밥도 하지 말고
I don't think he can complain.
못할 거 아니야. 예?
우리 여기 하면 21살 봐.
예.
아프기 전에는 나보고 저래 싹 보지 마. 근데 이제 딱 괜찮았거든요.
어.
이제 그 뒤로 간세 부사님 계속 부르던가 자기도.
어.
근데 한 번만 더 잘
나 그렇게 말을 하고.
그런 말 하지 말라고 나는 뭐라 하고.
Leave him even whatever he does.
자기가 있으면 뇌경색으로 쓰러졌다가 일어났거든요. 그래놓고 이제 상당히 그냥 덕을 봤어요. 그래놓고 굉장히 고마워라 하면서.
그래도 이제 못된 사람은 왜 부처님 믿는데 내가 쓰러지게 부처님이 놔뒀다.
Well, it's a little better to do like that
실제 그것 때문에 그렇게
rather
하는 건
than just
아닌데.
blaming Buddha for everything.
아 그런 소리 하면 안 돼요. 나 그러거든요. 그러면 안 되는가?
우리 저 정정심 뒤에 보살요.
Why is there no answer?
대답이 왜 안 나와?
You're being broadcasted.
전국에 중계가 다 된다 지금.
You're being broadcasted all over Korea.
중계가 다 돼서 지금 전국에 중계가 다 됐다.
With 2 cameras here, you're being broadcasted.
저 지금 카메라 2개가
Online, you can also watch it from Africa.
인터넷에서 아프리카까지 다 나가.
So far, none of you were seen, but today we took opportunity to show or introduce everyone. Are you doing hard?
네?
You have to try to recite the mantra at least for an hour a day.
1시간 해.
What about you?
그 앞에는
You have to do it at home.
아니 집에서 해야 돼.
I told you how to lesson. You have to do it hard. What about you?
부지런히 해야 돼. 그 뒤에는
I can't hear you.
안 들려.
Please recite mantra religiously.
주력 열심히 해.
Where were we?
어디 하다 말았어.
You need to stay awake all the time to countermeasure to the as a countermeasure to thinking and also meditation. And you need to, and if you don't forget the property of recollection, which is to maintain the mind of the object of practice to the mind. And if you achieve the recollection once, then you can also have a realization. If you have a proper opinion to the object of your practice, the stronger the recollection is, you can have a stronger recollection. For example, this is good or this is not working out. If you can remember all the things continuously, then you can maintain the state of self-awareness. So it's not good to have slumber or agitation again and again. If you can remember if this is good or if it's not working out, you can maintain the state of self-realization. So beginning with the agitation and slumber and also distraction that we talk about, if you remember them well, then if the slumber happens to you, then you can realize it very soon. So in places like Tibet or in Southeast Asia, they make you memorize everything. They make you memorize the sutras. What about you? How much can you concentrate? If you can concentrate like that, and only if you can concentrate like that, the agonies start to disappear and they start to lessen. You understand? This is a path to study. Without knowing this path,
이 길을 모르고서
Buddha has only told us
생각하고
or taught us
요
this
길을
path.
가더라고.
This is a way to overcome our samsara.
방법이란 말이야.
And what is samsara? Everything came because of our greed and our greediness to achieve something.
것들 때문에 일어난 것이니까. 네? 나는 요즘에 전국의 사람들이
Well, I stopped to think that why don't people all over country study? But I started to give them up and just thought that maybe Sakcha monastery we just study hard. Those people who we have relations, I hope their karmas lessen as they live, and I hope their karmas become lighter over time, so that if they face aging or even sickness, although we made those nursing homes,
요양원은 이제 옛날에는 요양원에 그런 데도 없어가지고 막 진짜 힘들게 되고
although that could be difficult and something, but still, although we live well, eating good food, our things inside us, it's all a mess because we cannot stop this.
우리는 석천사 그래서 이제 내가 요즘에 이제 저 밑에가 좀 시끄럽고 그래서
Since it's a little noisy down there, if it becomes a little quiet, then maybe about 10 people.
좀 집중으로 좀
I thought of making them do a little mantra recitation or try to calm them down a little. I thought maybe I should try to do that before I die. And so later, whether you die or I die, of course we are going to go eventually, whether it's you first or I first, but well, we never know what's going to happen or who dies sooner. But at the moment, those who are dead, we can say, well, be well, I'm leaving. We should be able to do something like that. Other than that, if we have some problem with Alzheimer, and if you tell me that, oh, have you come? That's not okay. Although we claim that we have studied so far, we still have some dementia, and well, even though the body can be uncomfortable, but so we cannot say that, oh well, because of your dementia, if we say that I don't remember you until someone from the market, that's something very embarrassing, isn't it? That's a problem, but well, if you follow the discipline very strictly, and if you practice samatha, and if the concentration lasts longer than 1 hour, then you will not have dementia. Although you could weaken spiritually or mentally, but it doesn't come to you.
많이 밤에 야 우리 요양은 막 하얀 연꽃에 가서 나도 할머니가 나 욕.
Well, when I went to White Lotus, well, one grandmother cursed me and spit at me. So sometimes the Jeonnam hospital, that owner of Jeonnam hospital, he also gets spat on sometimes. Where somehow, in a funny way, because of the traumas and because of their strong karmas, they have dementia, very strong ones. Maybe they were cursed, or maybe they have some problem of victimization, and the life that we lived in an improper way. It's all reflected, but if you see the nursing homes in Tibet, it's all same. They will have the money wheel on one hand, and rosary in other hand, and they will just recite Om Mani Padme Hum. So although there are about like 200 people there, there's only like 1 or 2 people who has dementia. That too from an accident. But in Korea, we have people smoking, drinking, angry. We are good at fighting, and they also get hurt while driving around in the car. And we also have so much greediness, and it's bound to. We are bound to have dementia. Our brains are going to suffer. It's bound to suffer.
그러니까 그걸 꼭 그래 저 뭐야 사마타만
So
가지고
it only doesn't work out with samatha, but you have to listen to the teaching, and you have to circulate the agony and your karma, and you have to read the scriptures, and you have to recite the mantras. Then you can do it in a calm and also in a very passionate manner, and even in your next life, you'll be born in a very good shape.
그렇게 된다니까.
It's just want to hear. In our normal life, in our daily life, you need to check the pessimistic thoughts, and also it's very important to recollect. Therefore, the property of the recollection or self-awareness is that you need to inspect your body and mind properly, and you need to double check if you are remaining in the state of practice. So it's very bad to have pessimistic thoughts. If you have pessimistic thoughts, then even from the body, you have bad hormones that influences your body.
참 안 좋아요. 그런 자 부정적인 번뇌 가운데도 부정적이거나 파괴적인.
So amongst the thoughts, if you have bad or violent or something like thoughts, is very bad for you. So I hope you also know that. And today we'll end our teaching over here.